Today I want to begin by exploring a new series that we haven't just mentioned, and I want to talk about this thing because I do believe that this year God is going to bring you greater influence. But when God gives a word over a church, he says there's going to be more influence over you, and I believe that not just for our church, but for you as individuals, because you are the church. I don't know if you know that. So when God says this is what's going to happen at the churches, we don't think, oh, Sundays are going to be good. We think, wow, their life is going to be really influential this year beyond anything we thought of. We better get on that. And so when we get away, we think, well, what can we practically do to equip you to be more influential in your world? And what's that going to look like? Let's prepare you for that. Isn't that a novel idea? So that's what we want to do in particular, because there's one thing that I've noticed that I want to talk about, and it cuts through pretty much everything. And we're not good at it. We might think we are, but I promise you we're not, and I think you might agree with me at the end of this. But I want to talk for the next few weeks, maybe a little bit longer, about a word that's been overused, overdone, but not really ever practiced particularly well. And when it has been allegedly practiced well, it's actually been abused. I want to talk about honour. I actually think honour is an incredible key to receiving influence and giving influence. It's a huge kingdom value. I'm going to talk into that today. So I want to start today by looking at something I've called the paradox of honor. So to kick it off, I have a question for you. Okay, who do you honor in your life? Who do you respect? Who do you hold in high regard? Now, in our culture, we actually give most of our honor to those who are successful or perceived to be successful. So we honor celebrities. Like, it's incredible, really. If you really take it back and you think about it, it's incredible. We actually get a lot of our knowledge and ideas and advice from celebrities who know nothing about what they're talking about. It's fascinating. So you've got a great sportsman giving you moral advice. It's quite remarkable, really. So we value influencers, sports people, celebrities, probably not politicians, which might be an issue all on its own. And the truth is that kind of stance on honor isn't really any different to the world that Jesus came to. It's the same problem then and as it is today for us. So I want to unpack that. You see, in the ancient world, there was probably and arguably nothing more important than your honor. I mean, people literally fought for their honor. A warrior's ultimate goal in life, which is really bizarre to us, was to die with honor. No, the idea of them having a bad death was like the worst thing that what they didn't want to do was be running, chasing somebody, trip up and fall on their own sword. I mean, that's just, that's not going to be good for them. What they wanted to do, they wanted to die with honor, kill 20 men against one, and then they've run out of steam, and then they're done. I don't know why I've gone into detail on that, but I felt like you weren't getting it. So honor was so important. Back then, your social status, your standing in the world was based on your honor. If you're honorable or seemed to be honorable, the world was your oyster. And if not, it definitely wasn't. So this idea of losing your honor played a massive role in the world that Jesus is in. The idea of shame, which is, I suppose, one of the opposites of honor in many ways, was the thing you wanted desperately, desperately to avoid. You didn't want to bring shame on you. You didn't want to bring shame on your family. You didn't want to be shamed because it literally limited all your opportunities. It was a social rejection, definite, if you were shamed. People that were shamed, people that had made mistakes or been taken advantage of and then shamed, there were literally so many instances of them being excommunicated or thrown out of their society, or thrown out of their, abandoned by their own family, or rejected by various people and people groups. So they're kind of social outcasts immediately. So you don't want to lose your honor. It was hugely, hugely important to everybody. So we find scriptures like the Good Samaritan. The Levites there, the Pharisees there, and they literally come across on this fairly dangerous road. They come across someone who's been robbed, and they're not sure if he's dead or not, but they know they should go and check, but they won't. And the reason they won't is because they're not allowed by their law to touch anybody that's unclean, and someone who's dead, potentially, would be unclean, which would make them lose their ceremonial cleanliness and make them lose their honor. And so let's just put this in perspective. There's someone, you're walking down the street and you know that actually if you touch someone who's dead or dying, you could become unclean. So you're going to put your honor above helping them. I mean, that's the reality they lived in. Honor was so important. That is ultimately why that took place. And so they're more concerned about their honor than this guy needing their help. Then we come to things like John 8, 3-5. It says, the scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery. Don't know what happened to the bloke, but misogynistic world. And placing her in the midst, they said to him, Teacher, this woman has been caught in the act of adultery. Now in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. I mean, they were lovely, weren't they? So these religious leaders tried to gain honor for themselves by dishonoring somebody else. The reason they've done that, it says to trap Jesus, put him in a pickle, but it obviously didn't. But the idea there is that they want this person to lose their honor. Why? And some reason it makes them come across better. I don't know why we do this, but sometimes I think we think by making someone else look bad, we make ourselves look good. It doesn't work, by the way. You never look good by making someone else look bad. It doesn't happen. We see the same behavior in Matthew 9:11. Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? Or why did they bring that up? Because actually you're unceremonially clean. Unclean. You can't do that. You're not allowed to socialize with anybody that isn't your kin. You can't hang out with sinners. You can't, the worst and the lowest of society, like shepherds and tax collectors. And can I say, sadly, in that culture, if you were a woman, you didn't have the rights you should have had. You weren't seen as equals. And if you're a kid, you had no rights whatsoever anyway. You were the bottom rung of society. So this is the world we're in. It's odd. It's weird for us to kind of grasp. And so why are they saying to the disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? Because they have a goal. And the goal is they want ultimately to shame him. John 6, 41-42. So the Jews grumbled about him because he said, I am the bread that came down from heaven. They said, is this not Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How does he now say, I have come down from heaven? See, here they tried to dishonor him as God by humanizing him. Not that he wasn't fully God and fully human, he was. But they're constantly trying to bring him dishonor, which shows you again how important honor actually is. They're trying to get the disciples to shame him and dishonor him. And we have to ask why. Why do people do that? Why did they do that to Jesus? Well, think about what dishonor actually causes. Doubt. Sows a seed of doubt about an individual or a project. Ultimately, they try to dishonor Jesus because they know dishonor brings them to discredit Jesus. The only reason people seek to put other people down is actually to gain influence. Does two things. When you make someone else look bad, what you're trying to do and what they're trying to do is cut that individual's influence off from your life. Because if they can bring you to doubt them, to dishonor them, you're not going to receive from them anymore. This is very important in this church and the church as a whole. So what you do is you dishonor somebody, then they don't get influence. Because they know that the people you honor, who you revere, who you hold in high regard, have influence over you. And what were they afraid of? They were afraid of the influence of Jesus, the kingdom of God being different to perhaps that they wanted it to be. And so what they're trying to do continuously, as you read the scriptures, is they're trying to shame Jesus. They're trying to dishonor him. Why? Because they're trying to discredit his influence. And so we can use that and we can say, that's really interesting. They're desperately trying to shame Jesus. Why? Well, because honor is so important. So important. And so they lived in a world that I think we do. When someone makes a mistake, we dishonor them. We see them as less. When something happens to them that we think that would never happen to us, we lower them. In our minds and our hearts, we dishonor people. And I was looking at this a little bit during our Grace series as well, just trying to understand this, trying to change my mentality to be more honorable. And I think this idea of holding and maintaining honor is exhausting. Because if you think about it, you're the same. We're all the same. We don't want to be shamed. Okay? So what happens is, especially in the church, can I be honest? The church is one of the worst places to mess up. Hopefully not here. We're amazing at shooting our own. It's incredibly ridiculous. I mean, we ain't got the first clue about honor. Where Jesus restores, we reject. We're really good at it. And that's a massive problem. But I think it's exhausting. It's exhausting to have to expect people to wear a mask and put a smile on their face when they're not coping. You know how many times people say they're fine? Freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. That's what that is. Because we feel like actually, if we're going to be honest about where we're at sometimes, and let me tell you this, sometimes in your life, things don't go well. For other people's reasons or for your own. Life gets hard. There's a difficult problem. Maybe you're struggling with something. And so we don't go to anybody to talk about it because we don't want to be shamed. Because why? We don't want to be rejected. And the issue is, and we said this during our Grace series, don't judge someone just because they sin differently to you. But we still maintain that kind of rejection culture. And I'm just not seeing that in the Bible. I don't know if you've noticed this, but our culture is actually really good at building people up. Have you noticed that? I've got a few examples. Who remembers old Golden Balls, David Beckham? He couldn't do wrong. I mean, he was lauded. He went from nobody knew him to scoring from the halfway line to being like everybody's. Well, he wasn't mine. He's a Man U player. Why would I have done that? But everyone loved this guy, and posters of him. I mean, he's everywhere. And then when he got with one of the Spice Girls, Victoria, it just blew up, and they were celebrated. And then we have this next thing, like Tiger Woods. He was celebrated too, wasn't he? Like constantly. Just this incredible athlete who's breaking all kinds of records. And then we go to this next one here, which is Meghan Markle. Who remembers her? Do you remember her? And everyone, and let me tell you, the church did this. They were like, oh, she's the new Esther. I think I fell into that. I thought this could be really good. She's got this fantastic rev doing this talk. We all got really excited. But do you see what I skipped there? When he fell, oh, we loved it. We love nothing better in the West than to pull people down. Beckham, when he kicked out a little bit and shouldn't really got sent off, like literally, take your fury out on our David Beckham dartboard. The same paper that continued to kind of glorify him couldn't wait to shoot him down. The heck is wrong with us as a society? It's bonkers. And we know about Meghan Markle, don't we? I mean, I don't watch the news anymore. Vic does. I just can't be bothered with it. I think it's a load of rubbish. I don't know what's going on in the world. But this is Jeremy Clarkson. I had an argument with someone. We both agreed Meghan Markle is an unhinged monster, but couldn't agree just how awful she is. I mean, I don't know who reads this stuff, but they're selling. And they're selling a lot. Because we love to build a hero up and then we love to pull him down. When it comes to honour in the West, we haven't got a flipping clue what we are doing. And I want to say that's absolutely applicable to the church too. I don't think we're good at it. And that has to change. Because if we want to influence the world around us, I'm telling you that if we could learn the art of honour, it changes everything. And I mean everything. Because when you honour, everyone notices. It's so countercultural that it's impossible for you not to make a difference. A number of years ago, I'd got saved at 18, I was about 21, and I had a lot of dishonour thrown at me at work. It was a phenomenal learning experience for no reason at all. Very hard worker, very fair boss at M&S. And all of a sudden, this guy comes in and like stirs the pot. And I was quite naive because I trusted everybody and thought everybody was lovely and just wanted to help everybody. He kind of sowed this dishonour about me, and I didn't realise it was happening until people stopped working as hard, and it was really weird. And so I prayed about it, and I was asking the Father, I said, I don't know what's happened here, but my relationship with these guys has just gone to pot. And I genuinely don't know what's happened. I think it's got something to do with that new guy who's been here for 6 months. And so this went on for another few months, and then I got called to see my boss, who I got on really well with. And he sat me down and he said, Mike, I've got some news for you. I was like, okay, is it good, is it bad? He said, both. Right, okay. He said, I've seen what's been happening on your department. I was like, my initial reaction, can you kind of tell me what's gone on? Because I don't know. He said, I've been watching it. I've been watching from the balcony, and I'd seen him on the balcony, which I thought was a bit weird. And he said, and I've had a few discussions with people. I want to tell you, I've just fired this individual. I was like, and I've moved these two off into another department, and one of them's quit. So I want you to go up a notch. I'm promoting you, and we'll make sure you get the team you need. And I'm like, everything in me wanted to dishonour and discredit everybody. But someone had noticed that I'd not risen to the bait. This is probably the only time I've ever got this right, by the way. Risen to the bait, and someone had seen that, and honour brought me honour. It's the only thing I could work out. Now, I still feel confused. I can only think it was a demonic thing. It was really weird. I was very young, so I think a few people got very annoyed that I could ask them to do stuff. But it was just one of those scenarios where I think, the power of honour is so important. Because what tried to happen was they tried to dishonour me and discredit me, and it kind of worked. And the only way out of that was to maintain honour. Because let me tell you this, when someone is nice and they're good and they're kind, honour is the easiest thing on the planet. Ain't it? It's so easy. Like, I'm as good at honouring almost as Jesus when someone's lovely. But when they're a jerk, when they're just annoying, when they're rude, obnoxious, when they're so wrong, or they're coming at you with personal attacks, I'm probably not brilliant at honour. It's harder, isn't it? To the point that actually maybe we don't. Or maybe we're like, hold our tongue, but to everyone else we're like, they are the worst person in the world. And it may be the case. However, we've got to think about honour. In our world, I just really struggle with this idea of church. I think with this whole world, I mean, it was broken culture then, but I don't think a lot's changed. I think honour is still something that we don't do and we don't know. I've written a few things here. As long as people make us feel good or better about ourselves, then we honour them. When their success benefits us, we honour them. When their failure makes us feel better about ourselves, we pull them down even more. So I think we're exhausted as a society because we're desperate. We have to wear masks. We try and fake it till we make it. And then when we make it, we're still faking it because no one's perfect. And so you don't. I mean, I'm going to talk a little bit about the power of confession during this, because we don't confess our sins to each other because we're so scared about what people think. You don't want to be rejected. And yet it's scriptural. It's scripture. It's this idea of having such a safe community that you can say, I'm really struggling with this. Like, I'm struggling with food. I'm struggling with lust. I've got horrible thought life. Help me. Like, can you pray with me? But we don't, because we don't want to be judged, which means we'll never get free. So it's to be open, it's to confess, it's to confide. But you won't do that if we don't have a culture of honor. Because sin doesn't get to determine your value. I think we're good at creating celebrity pastors as well. These people that are great with charisma, they inherit big churches or create big churches. And then we love to pull them down when they get it wrong. We expect, I think, new Christians to be suddenly changed and completely different. And sometimes that happens. Quite often it doesn't. It's a process, just like it was with all of us. And then long-standing Christians, when they mess up and they get it wrong, we're like, whoa, that's outrageous. Kind of expecting problems for people in life, because life's hard. Trauma happens. But I do have good news. That culture was never meant to exist. The culture that was meant to exist is the one that Jesus brought. And he turned the whole concept of honor upside down. So to the religiously pious, he said things like Matthew 23:27, woe to you scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites. Love this. Look at Jesus getting all in their face. For you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly appear beautiful, but within are full of dead people's bones and all uncleanness. He's trying to get the point that you're so bothered about looking honorable, you've forgotten about being honorable. He's like, what's the point in dressing us up? Take the flipping masks off. If you'd acknowledge that you are also sick in sin, then maybe we can help each other. But until you jump off your big high horse and make out that everyone's got an issue but you, no one's gonna heal. This world doesn't change. Luke 14:10-11. But when you're invited, I love this. Take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, friend, move up to a better place. Then you'll be honored in the presence of all the other guests. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. What a phenomenal truth. He's basically taking honor as maintaining and holding your high status, doing the opposite, actually making yourself low than other people, becoming servant-hearted. And let me tell you this, influence is leadership and leadership is influence. And the way to get influence is to humble yourself. The way to get favor is to lower yourself. God says, love your neighbor ultimately like you do yourself or above yourself. Why? Because it's a kingdom concept. It's the paradox of honor. It's like when you raise someone else up, there's something happens. Now, in practical terms, maybe that doesn't happen all the time. Maybe you're really honorable of your boss and he doesn't like you. It'll take time to break through brokenness of people's issues and hearts. There's something else just to mention here. There's a couple of things, because what I love about Jesus is he just shocks people. So there's a couple of things that he said, and one was just hilarious to me because I think it's something that we've probably done in this church back in the day, and most churches do this, but I already brought you this idea of children being kind of the lowest rung of society, right? And it says in Matthew 19:13-15, then children were brought to him that he may lay his hands on them and pray. The disciples rebuked the people. Which I love. Let's pause there. Because essentially what he's saying in this moment is the disciples are like, these flipping kids are causing such an annoyance. Why on earth have the parents brought them? Get them under control so we can listen to Jesus. Right? And he's been there. Like when you've got kids, you're just freaking out. They're annoying everybody, right? Just think about the kids. Forget everything else. Let's look after the babies. Let's look after the young ones. And then I love this. But Jesus said, let the little children come to me and do not hinder them. For to them belongs the kingdom of heaven. So what Jesus is actually saying is, do you realize that I know there are bottom down here and you don't give a monkey's, but actually it's for them. So he takes them from down here and he puts them up here. This is incredible. We see in various other verses, I think we've got Luke 14, 10 to 11 here. No, that's the wrong one. I haven't put it on. Do you remember the story of the adulterous woman? We looked a bit earlier, but it's this idea and this principle that they're trying to shame this woman. And what does Jesus actually do? He kneels in the dirt next to her and he manages to dismiss them. He restores her value and takes their discrediting and their dishonor and he brings her dignity and value and holds her back and then sends her on her way. He's restoring value to her. I once had someone a long time ago in this church. They came to me. I barely knew them. I don't think I'd spoken to them more than twice. And they came up to me and said, they were just angry. I don't know what I'd done. Must have said something in a talk. That's what normally happens. And she said to me, she said, you won't have my respect until you earn my respect. I was like, so me being me, I kind of used to that kind of talk occasionally, especially from Christians. None of you, you're all perfect. And I was like, well, yeah, I'm going to do this. So I said, oh, it's really, it's a shame you don't follow the way of Jesus. And obviously she was a bit annoyed. So I waited for another moment to talk because obviously she was annoyed anyway. And I should have been more sensitive maybe. But I thought, no, this is a learning moment. This person's done here because they obviously have got an issue with something. And I'm not sure I'll ever recover what it is, but we'll see. We always want to restore. And so then when I got married and I said, well, to be honest, I don't have to earn your respect because you've already got mine. Because you're made in the image of God and so am I. And there isn't anybody you've ever met that God doesn't love. So because everybody is made in the image of God, everybody is due honor and respect. Now some people can lose your respect, but they can't lose your honor. We've got this weird concept that we don't like to give out grace unless someone's meeting our standards or what we think those standards are. And it's so bizarre to me and it needs to change. I know ultimately it's bizarre to you. And I know you've got honor nailed, like you're amazing at honor and you didn't need this talk at all. I'm quite sure it's just for me. Just for me. I love that he takes the lowest in society, the poor, the ostracized, the excluded, and he restores their value, their dignity, their honor. He gives them purpose. I do want to mention this briefly before we start to wrap up. There are people that use honor to abuse. So they use verses like, I think we've got it here, 1 Thessalonians 5:12. Honor those who are your leaders in the Lord's work. They work hard among you and give you spiritual guidance. Yeah, come on, what are you doing? No. So quite often we see this, particularly in more traditional kind of charismatic societies. So leaders and maybe partners or spouses or bosses, normally narcissists when they do this, and they've got their issues, but what they do is they demand honor. Well, you respect me because I'm in charge, or you do what we ask you to do. You honor this, you honor, and it's pushed on us. That's very, very abusive. That's not psychological safety. Now, in that scenario, I think there's probably not a lot you can do but kind of get a new job, really. But it's this instance of this in our society where actually you are due honor, you are to be valued. And honor, from this context, is all about if that person is serving you, they are due honor. Not if it's self-serving. So some people do abuse this idea of honor and demand it, and we think, well, actually, no. When we serve each other, honor comes naturally. So that's the ultimate kingdom value on that aspect. I just wanted to qualify that. Jesus, I love it. He just goes for the jugular. He's particularly difficult and awkward and takes it to the edge. Some people think I'm bad. Jesus is hilarious. So in the scriptures in 1 Peter 2:17, it tells us this: honor everyone, love the brotherhood, revere God, honor the emperor. Now, let's say that 1 Peter is written in AD 63, something around there. And do you know who the emperor was in 63 AD? This guy, he's gorgeous, isn't he? Ooh. I don't know what happened. He's got good sideburns, though. I'm not quite sure what happens there. No beard, but the sideburn comes right down. Maybe that was a thing. Maybe I need to get with it. Come next week, then this will be gone. And then Vic will leave me. Does anyone hear that? I said Vic would leave me. I thought that was quite funny, off the cuff, but apparently not. That's fine. You're done already. I'm not even been that long. This is Nero. Nero was vile. Let me give you one thing to know about Nero. Nero essentially started a fire, blamed the Christians, had a massive agenda against them, and when he had garden parties, sorry, this is a bit gross. If you are squeamish, shut your ears, seriously, because you won't want to hear this. But he used the Christians' bodies as human candles at his garden parties. That is how disgraceful he was. Honor the emperor. Are you kidding me? That guy? What the heck? That's a bizarre concept. Jesus is making the incredible point that everybody is due honor, because everybody is made in the image of God. So why have I said all this? Well, because I believe this is an influential year for you and for us as a community. And I think in our society, where we're great at pulling people down, and we're great at shaming, and we're great at seeing people fall and being part of that and gossiping about it and saying how bad it is, we have one of the greatest opportunities of influence we've arguably ever had with this media world. And that is if we can be honorable. If the gossip stops with you. So there came a point, and I don't get a lot right in my life, but I've tried hard with honor, and I still get it wrong because I moan about the church too much, and I get annoyed with ministers all the time. So I've still got massive issues with honor, and I need to work out how I process that. And I've been honest about that. It doesn't make it okay, but I have been honest about that. So we get to this point where we need to bring honor in difficult situations, and to people that maybe we wouldn't normally, but this is an incredible opportunity. If the gossip stops with you, I rarely hear gossip now. Like, I don't get gossipy stuff. Why? Because it stops. So I don't take it anywhere, because I challenge it when I hear it. Because, it's not helpful. What are you doing? Have you spoken to the individual? I'm not very good with my timekeeping sometimes. I'm all over the place sometimes. It's dishonorable to be late. It's dishonorable to you to be 10 minutes late. I still think 5 minutes is fine because life happens. But someone's at the back going, no, Dave, don't look at me, mate. And I'll see you tomorrow at 2:30. So it's just one of those things, but it's dishonorable. Everything in our life leads someone to bring value to them or disvalue to them. It's honoring them or not honoring them. And whether they're good to you or not, they still need honor. It doesn't mean you have to follow them. It doesn't mean you have to give them influence. But if you're in a job you love but a boss you hate, and they don't treat you well, you still have to honor. You don't have to go for drinks with them. Honor changes things. People notice honor. I promise you. You will have seen this in your life. You'll have seen people bring this attribute. If you want to change the neighborhood vibe, if you want to change a social group, every time there's dishonor, if you bring honor, it's amazing. And if you want to start a culture of honor, you do things like this. Caleb, stand up. Off the cuff, sorry. I value you because you are awesome. I love the fact that you'd never been involved in doing worship leading. You're a bit nervous and anxious. You have utterly excelled. You are becoming you have become an incredible man. We highly value and respect you here. We think you're brilliant. Now, right? And the best is yet to come. But the problem is, Caleb is incredibly uncomfortable. Now that I have called him out, you can sit down. Because we're not used to that. It's weird. We're not used to being honored. It's strange. You clapped him. The normal reaction for Caleb there, maybe he enjoyed that. Maybe we'll do it again. Yeah. And bow. Because it's not something a part of our culture. Even here, we're not. We kind of just follow everybody else. If we start honoring people and start calling out the greatness in them, it hits you. Like, do they really mean that? So if someone's talking badly about someone, and it does happen from time to time, you get frustrated, and actually there's good reason. I always say, please explain, but don't complain. But feel free to complain. But let's move it from complain to explain. Otherwise it becomes gossip. But we want to be real. We want to say we're struggling, and this person's a jerk, etc., and our boss we're struggling with, or Mike's an idiot. Fair play. I'll man up. Of course I am. And I'll annoy you sometimes. I don't mean to. I want to serve you. But it's this idea of we can change the narrative in our social groups. We can change the narratives in the staff room. We can change the narratives in our small group if we need to. We can change the narrative at our tennis club or wherever we happen to be doing stuff. And it changes everything. You might lose a couple of friends because they love that world and they're so entrenched in it, they're not going to want to be around you. But you will receive honor for being honorable, and honor brings influence. If you want to influence your world, you bring honor. It changes everything because people flock to it. Can you personally implement more honor in your spheres of influence to make a difference? I guarantee you, even in your own home, even amongst some of your best friends, amongst some of your closest networks, in your workplace, you have an opportunity tomorrow that you are going to notice and you're going to spot where you can bring honor where there's dishonor, because it's so ingrained in our culture. And when you start to do that, people will notice and they'll lean forward, and then you can start discipling them in the way of Jesus.